Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good, the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and I'm back in the driver's seat again, doing proper introductions and other proper things on this show, unlike the monotone voice of my co-host. But we can get to that a little bit later. But as always, I'm joined by Rafe because I can't do this alone, and I've let him try a couple times. So, Rafe, how are you doing today?
Well, Zach, I am wonderful. It is like they say, it is a wonderful day to be doing a podcast with you. Yeah, I was talking to one of our listeners this morning, actually, and this person said, it's you do a good job by yourself, and Zach does a good job by himself, but you guys have this synergy, this like teammate thing. So,
yeah, I mean that's a very good point because if I do this by myself, we're not going to have the childlike wonder and joy that you bring, and then if you do this by yourself, you're not going to have the whatever I bring. So
no, it is interesting. If you've ever, those of you out there that have your own podcast, it is a remarkably difficult thing to talk to just the screen for 25 to 40 minutes. It's a tough thing, and it's just so much easier, Zach, with you here to as a straight man and as a sounding board for some of these ideas. It's a lot easier to do with somebody else in the room.
Yeah, that's perfectly right. Just remember to all of our listeners, you can find us on the internet at Bufnagle. We're the first thing that shows up because we're the best thing that shows up. And then if you want to contact us, legal@bufnagle.com, bufnagle@bufnagle.com, the best at bufnagle.com. You name it, we probably have it. But yeah, that's where we're at today.
But Zach,
we're going to have a fun day.
You can reach us there, and we are everywhere on the internet. Zach, we are everywhere. Okay, so I was planting some plants with your sister the other day. We were like digging in the dirt and putting some, and they come in these buckets, and they have the little thing, the card in it with the name on it, and it also has the picture of the flower. It tells you it needs full sun. It tells you it needs water for some reason. All right, and then underneath it has like the plant name, and the plant name was, I kid you not, it was Plantius bufnagalus. And it was like, we're everywhere out there. We're everywhere out there. And you know what? If you're listening, we really would appreciate a good review and a subscription. And if you give us a 5-star review, Zach, I get pudding. And that is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that makes your week right there. But today we're talking about skills and challenges, the skills that we have, the challenges we take on, and what we can learn from merging the two together and how we grow through challenges.
So, and you have a model for this, right? And this is a thing you've picked up in the coaching you've been doing and the reading you've been doing. You have a way to think about skills and challenges. And
yeah, I mean, I think the most basic default, and it's more of a spoken rule rather than a visual rule. We can talk about the visual rule in a second, but the spoken rule is the more skill you have, the more challenge you can take on. So I am a pretty skilled athlete, so I can take on a little more athletic endeavors than you can. If you would take on the same athletic endeavors I would, you would fall flat. And then if you would fall flat on that, you'd be overloaded and you'd be like, why the hell am I doing this? Well, and then you would give up pursuing that skill in the future.
Well, that happened. Do you remember that time you were in grad school and I came to visit to help out rugby practice with you guys, and I was running around. Zach, I've never been shot, but I got to imagine that pain in my calf when I blew out that calf muscle.
Pulled your calf?
Man, Zach, I heard it. I heard it pop. And those of you who pulled that muscle know what that is like. That was excruciating. And it took me, I don't know, it was 6 weeks to get back to walking readily. And it was never one of those things that just one day you woke up and it was better. It was slow, incremental return to normalcy. And that was, don't do that. That was a challenge that exceeded my skill set.
Yes.
And that changes over time. So
yeah, and the same thing exists for me. If I would try to take on certain mathematical coding problems that you do on a daily basis, my skill is not up to that level yet, which means that I'm going to struggle with the challenge, which means I'm going to dislike the challenge, which means I'm probably going to give up on the challenge, which means I don't pursue that skill anymore, which means the skill I have never grows to be able to meet that challenge. So, whatever our skills are, whatever the challenge is, we need those two things to come into alignment. And this is where the visual component of it comes through. I imagine skill is one circle, challenge is another circle, and then they meet together and they create a little Venn diagram. Where those two things overlap is the growth zone. It's where the skill is strong enough to meet parts of the challenge, which means that when you continue to work on the skill, eventually you're going to be able to complete the whole challenge. And as you continue to get better at the skill, you can then take on new challenges as the challenge you were previously taking on gets smaller and smaller and becomes just a normal part of executing that skill.
So if they don't overlap, all right, if your skill set does not, like, I'm sure there are components, like, I'm not a dancer. I'm
Not with that attitude.
I well, I did the right. We took. You ever take dance lessons, Zach?
Look at me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I learned how to do
The only dancing I ever did is when I injured my shoulder, and we had to tape up my shoulder with a bunch of ice and stuff like that. And the person was doing whatever, and they needed to wrap me around, and they were like, "Okay, cool. I need you to pirouette." I was able to do a couple pirouettes to get the tape wrapped properly around my shoulder, so I could not be completely injured. And I was mostly like 95% injured. Well, but that's my most dancing skills.
Well, I learned a little bit of dancing stuff before your sister's wedding because we wanted to do the wedding dancing stuff and not look like complete total morons. So we went to the little dancing school, and I'm going to encourage I'm going to encourage everybody out there to take some ballroom dance lessons. It just the really simple stuff, because it is amazing how when you know nothing, anything is a dramatic improvement to where you are. And so my skill set was essentially at zero. The challenge was small enough that we could reach it, and so I went, and your sister went, and your mom went, and your brother-in-law went. We all went and did that kind of together, and we learned how to do that, so we didn't completely suck at the wedding. And it's a lot of fun to be able to do it right instead of saying one of two things: either doing it wrong or saying no, I just don't dance. And that's we're not doing the Dancing with the Stars thing, but we successfully navigated the father-daughter dance and the in-laws dance, whatever that is. So it's a good thing. So your skill set can't be too small relative to your challenge set, or the challenge set can't be too big relative to the skill set.
Well, there needs to be like you mentioned it. If there's a gap between the challenge and the skill, that's when you get overloaded, is what I call it. There's a gap between the two. It's your skill is not up to the challenge yet, is the operative word there, which means that you need to choose a challenge that is closer to that skill so that you can eventually get to the big skill. The dancing is a perfect example. The small challenge would be doing the father-daughter dance. The big challenge is doing Dancing with the Stars. You can't go from -2 skill to do Dancing with the Stars if you don't start with the father and daughter dance, and then you move from that onto the next thing, and you keep going further and further.
Well, I see that, though. I see people with the attitude that, well, I don't want to take the lessons because I don't want people to think that I don't know. And my thought is, well, you don't know. So, we shouldn't be trying to fool anybody. And I see that a lot with people singing, with people drawing, with people dancing. A lot of the artwork things come into that. A lot of the human expression things are things that people are almost embarrassed to not have, as if somehow they are supposed to naturally have them. And it's interesting because you'll see an act on a TV show or in a movie, and you're like, well, I wonder where this guy came from. And they all went to school for theater. They learned how to act. Very few people walk off the street and are able to act. People don't walk off the street and learn how to swing a golf club. They don't walk off the street and learn how to do differential calculus. So you have to learn these things, and you got to start at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, the greats weren't great because at birth they could paint. The greats were great because they painted a lot. They started with a small skill, and they built that into something bigger. I've mentioned on this podcast before, I like to draw. Are my drawings any good? You know, I like them. You know what? So I really don't care. But what they provide for me is I have gotten better the more I have done it. My skill has improved. I have seen that improvement. So now the things I am doing are a little more complex. I'm now using perspective rather than everything's being like frontward facing. Like there's a little more 3D element involved. It's things like that. My skill has improved. I've gotten better, which means that the challenges I'm taking on are a little bit bigger. Are they what, Picasso did? No. Do I care to be the next Picasso? Also, no.
Well, that's part of the challenge. I think that gets in the way of a lot of people, and this is a this is a challenge of our age. Is the issue with seeing absolute greatness on a regular basis and comparing yourselves to that? And it is the value in our age is that you get to see absolute greatness. The downside is if you compare yourself to that, you fall short, and then and then you don't even achieve a human level of enjoyment of that thing. You don't have to be Picasso to enjoy making art, right? And you
Or
don't
being
have
able to appreciate art.
right, right. And that's the other thing is you don't have to be Tiger Woods to enjoy a day on the golf course. But I tell you, it's a lot more fun on the golf course if you know how to play. If you have a certain level of skill, it's a lot more fun, all right, than chasing the ball in the woods when all your friends are standing there waiting for you. It is, the practice makes everything better. The discipline to improves your love of the skill you obtain. It's not more fun if you don't know how. It's never fun. It's never fun if you don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know the perseverance, the resiliency that comes with sticking with the skill because you're like, I want to get better at this, regardless if it's going to give you worldwide fame. It's the fact that you're putting the effort through um, to do the next thing. I've shared the Teddy Roosevelt quote before. The fact that there is no effort without error and shortcoming. You need to fail at something a little bit. You need to maybe not be perfect in order to get better at the thing that you're trying to take on.
Do you see that? So you were in you successfully navigated law school, and you've done high level college athletics, and you've done some, I don't want to say high level musical abilities, but you've done music stuff that when you were in middle school. And like, have you seen people that have just given up on even attempting to try because they don't want anybody to think that they don't know?
I mean, yeah, I see a lot of people who are good academics. And you touched on earlier. They won't touch the arts. They won't touch the drawings, the painting, the things, the music, the creative natures, the humanity sides. But I think like because they're scared to fail. I think I honestly believe that they are scared to fail because they've never done that because they've always had the skill to meet whatever the new challenge is, especially on an academic level. I mean, for me, I don't know. Maybe it's because it was just how I was raised, or the scenarios I put myself in. But like, I was never a great athlete. I think most people who have played with me or who have watched me play or who have coached me would say that. Um, the thing that made me a good athlete was the fact that I worked hard, I wanted to learn, and I was curious. And so I took the opportunity to put my skill wherever it was, and I reached whatever the highest challenge was that I could get with my skill. I obtained that, and I just tried to reach for just something a little bit higher.
Yeah, it is a. I guess that's one thing I'm very pleased with all my kids is that they possess a mindset that is willing to screw something up, whether it's learning to water ski or whether it's playing basketball or learning, swinging a golf club, trying to write computer code. Uh, it's you. I guess you are called. There's this thing. You are called to be everything you have been given, right? And a lot of people talk about virtue as a thing that is like that you are doing what you should do because the right thing to do. But I think that's not quite the proper interpretation, at least from the Greek perspective. Virtue is excellence, right? And if you want to live a virtuous life is to live a life of excellence at living, right? And you can't live an excellent life if you are a scoundrel, or if you're a liar, or if you are a philanderer. Um, but it's about achieving excellence in life, and a lot of that comes with taking risk and putting yourself in a position where you might fail.
Yeah, and I think and one of the things about taking risk is taking a leap of faith. Taking the fact that, okay, cool, I know what I am capable of. Is the things that I am capable enough to meet this certain challenge, and just taking the opportunity to be like, okay, cool. If I take this leap, what happens? And I believe that most of the time, if you take a leap, a good thing will happen rather than a negative thing.
Well, a lot of times but it makes good sense to do that wisely, right? There are
Yeah,
times, you shouldn't take a leap that says, "I'll bet I can jump off this 4-story building and land on," okay, so there's certain things that are just plain dumb. But with the right coaching and mentoring and teaching and parenting, and an individual perspective of taking a calculated risk, and knowing what the real downside is. That's one of those things. What is the worst thing that can happen if you do this and you fail? All right. Well, some things, the worst thing can be pretty bad. Right, like trying to beat the train in your car. Okay, the worst thing that can happen can be pretty bad. But trying out for the dance team. All right, picking up taking dance lessons, or taking golf lessons, or picking up a book on differential equations after you had your calculus. Hey, give it a whirl. That's how you achieve life's excellence.
yeah. I think another perfect way to say that is, instead of looking at the challenge and thinking, "What if I fail?" It's, "What if I succeed and I'm part of that? What if I get to be part of something bigger than myself? I get to experience something. What if I decide to start drawing art and I eventually, I have a thing that's in a gallery. Maybe it's for a day, but it's in a gallery. I get to succeed and showcase that, and that's kind of cool. Not, oh, what if I fail? So why am I hiding? Like we shrink and we become small when we get the idea of like, well, I might fail. I'm just like, but I might succeed, and I could be big and bold and strong and vibrant, brilliant.
So where does that fear come from? I mean, I think everybody I know has had experience. Well, I think of a few people that I can't name an experience, but I'm sure that they've had them. But it's a learned skill that you have to. Well, it's a learned behavior, I guess, to have that fear of failure. Little kids, they learn to walk. They fall down all the time. They take a couple steps, boom. I've watched your nieces doing these life uh, life events, these walkings and things. And we were with your little niece about a week ago, and when we got there, she was walking only with holding somebody's hand. And by the time we left, she was walking all over the house on her own. And then she got to the point. Ever tell you this? That she decided that she could try to walk with her eyes closed. Okay, she's like 15 months old, and you'd put her down, and she'd stand up real straight, and then close her eyes and start walking around the room. And maybe that's too much faith. Maybe that's a little bit. Maybe that's being a little bit cocky, but I guess somehow life beats you down to the point where you're scared to take even rational risks, where there's really nothing to lose. And I guess it just hurts so much. It hurts to see that, to me, in kids that won't try. They think their life is over at 11 if they didn't make the middle school JV baseball team. What's the Mark Burley rule, Zach?
Yeah, what? Not, he didn't make his freshman team in high school, like, and then he went on to win a World Series. But like, I don't know. I think sports are different, but that's a completely like. I mean, I think I'm the perfect example of that. Like, I'm not a very good athlete. I just worked really hard. Like, I decided, like, I want to pursue this. I'm going to work hard, and whatever my skill level is, I want to meet the top end of that. If that means I only play at high school, well, I want to be the best high school player I can be.
Well,
I
and
think we get so caught up in the idea that I have to be the best of the best of the best,
sure.
sir, that we forget the fact that we just need to be the best at whatever we are. I want to best amateur artist, best amateur ping pong player, whatever it is, best in your softball league at hitting home runs, whatever it may be. It's important to understand that, okay, if you know what your skill ceiling is, like push the top of it. Don't be afraid of being like, oh, well, I'm only good at X. It's like, are you though?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from, that is about achieving the excellence, achieving excellence, living an excellent life, living a virtuous life that way. The A lot of that comes with our current age and seeing excellence all around. All right. Now, you can say whatever you want about this podcast, Zach, and I will not say that this is the world's greatest podcast. We don't have the time, nor the effort, nor the skill set yet to be able to produce one of these ones that's off the chart. But you know what we did do? By doing this over and over and over again, and through all the listeners out there, we have gotten to this thing. It's a global top 10% podcast. And you know what? If you would have told me that, Zach, before we started, that Zach, I bet we can be Dad, I bet we can be a top 10%. Like, no, I was like, really? Are you kidding me? No, we're there. Okay, we are there. And keeping climbing though, it's getting steep. It's getting steep. There's a lot of really great stuff out there. But had we never started this, we would have gotten nothing. We would still be sitting here, and you guys would be sitting there staring at your phones, wondering why there's nothing in your podcast. All right, you've got to keep trying. All right, and that's a lesson to parents and coaches and mentors. You've got to keep encouraging people until they reach their max, and their max is often a lot higher than you think it is.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Additionally, you bring up the sports thing, and I've said this on this podcast before. Sports are a perfect place, a safe place for kids to learn about failure, success, growth, change, challenges, all those things, because at the end of the day, 1% of those guys are going to play on the college level, and then like 0.03% of the college guys are going to play at professional level. It doesn't matter, but you can teach life skills. You can learn how to get back up from a 9-1 deficit or whatever it is, or how to bounce back the next game, or whatever it may be. You can teach those skills. Additionally, there's other like life skills you can teach about, like meditation, visualization, things like that we've talked about before, that can help elevate people's lives after they move on from sports. But if we get so caught up in the fact that like we have to win, or we have to be the best in our division or best in the state, the focus shifts away from teaching these kids about life and the beauty of it into something that they have to treat it almost like a job. And then, well, it's not fun anymore. They're going to get burnt out. They're going to struggle with like finding out who they are identity wise once they leave the sport, because they never actually learned how to deal with these issues. They never learned how to process them.
It was amazing to me coaching little kids. Like, I started coaching you guys when like you were in first or second grade. I forget what it was.
I was like 3 probably.
Yeah. Well, there were, okay. So here's a thing for dads. I saw my neighbor next door he's got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a negative 1-month-old, all boys. And he was in the backyard today throwing the ball to him, and they were trying to hit it. And if hitting a baseball is a really hard thing to do as a little kid, and just here's a lesson to the dads out there. All right, what I used to tell you guys is I would say I'd get you in the batter's box and I'd have you line up, and I would stand wherever I stood with the ball, and I would say, okay, give me a practice swing. All right, and then you would swing, and I would say, okay, here comes the pitch, and then you'd do it again. And what I would do is I would aim for where you set the bat. Okay, and that was like when you hit the ball. I hate to say it, when you hit the ball, that's because I threw a really, really good pitch. Right? And I wanted to tell the coach that. But you know what that does then? That breeds this idea that, yeah, I can do this. I can do that. And you can do it.
Which means that your skill is improving, which means the challenge you can take on is going to be a little bit higher next time.
Yeah, and but what amazed me with when I started coaching other people's kids, right? They'd get in there, they'd swing at a pitch and miss. And at that point, the at-bat was over, because they were like, I can't hit the ball. I'm never going to, and they would be hanging their heads. And this guy just threw you're 8 years old, and this guy's throwing a 75-mile-an-hour fastball by him, of course you're going to miss. I mean, of course you are the first time. I remember so vividly when you guys started playing how long it took before you even made contact with the ball the first time. How many games of like, 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts swinging, right? Because you just couldn't. But at least
At
they
least
were
you went down
swinging.
swinging.
Yeah, that's right. But but the first thing we had to teach all of these other kids, and in basketball, we'd get down 4-0, and the other kids they were hanging their heads. They were convinced we're going to lose. They were going to give it up, and the emotional swing of these kids um, at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, it just was mind-boggling to me. I was like, how are you going to get through adulthood if you swing that much on the first, if your emotions swing that on the first bit of adversity? How are you going to get by that? And I love what you say about sports teaching you a it's a safe place to learn to fail. It's a safe. You
It's a
say
safe place to
there's
learn about life.
right. There's no
You're,
consequence.
there's one state champion in whatever sport you're playing in your high school, like on the state high school level. There's one state champion because there's one state that you're playing. Like,
You can't all
not
be.
everybody's going to win. Like, but what can you do to learn from the loss or to bounce back or to understand like what it took to get there? Like, it's not easy to win a state championship. I got lucky and I won too, but like it's not easy.
No,
How
right.
many games did we lose? How many times did we get knocked down? How many of those other things did we have to look deep in and like, okay, cool.
Well, how many?
Do we give up?
Well,
Do
you
we
won.
curl up and
You
die
won
or
two
what?
states. You won 2 championships, but you also lost two. All right, at least two. All right, if you count the other seasons and the other sports, there's sports that you guys didn't even.
Win games in.
Yeah, it was like we had some really bad seasons. We got really beat up by a lot of different teams in a lot of different sports, and and that is a metaphor for life. You get beat up a lot. All right, you apply for jobs. Right, you might fill out 50 applications before you even get an interview. Right, you have got to get back in the batter's box, and you have got to keep swinging, and that is the reason we do the sports. All right, and that's when you teach it, and when you coach it, and when you mentor it, you've got to make sure the challenge is within reach of the skill set.
Additionally, too, like the sports thing. Okay, cool. 3% of I think the number is 3% of all high school athletes go on to play in college. The number of those ones playing in college that are playing at a Division I program that can properly support them on a full scholarship is very small when you look at the ecosystem of college sports. And then additionally, the ones that go on to play professionally is really, really small. So like if you're a high school college athlete and you're making that next step, like you're not going to play at the next level. Like you might want to pursue that, and that's a great pursuit. In the pursuit of hard things, awesome, go for it. But like understand that like there's a little bit more that you get to learn about life from doing this thing that's going to be able to positively impact your life once you're done playing. Like what lessons can you give to the next generation from your career that is going to positively impact them? Like that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I always thought that it was unwise to measure the success of it. For example, I'll say a high school coach because they are so vitally important in young men's lives, but now young women's lives too, with a lot of women playing sports. Is we should not measure their success by, I used to say, by touchdowns and tackles. All right, we shouldn't measure it that way. We should measure their success by the manner of the men they produce. Right? Who are they producing that year, 4 years down the road, 15, 25 years down the road? It's very interesting that my neighbor here in Indiana is a coach at the local high school, and he is he's an assistant, and he teaches mathematics, I think, and the head coach also coached this guy when he was in college. All right, so they have developed a lifetime mentorship between the student athlete and the coach. And those are the things that to me speak wonders. Okay, there's a guy like Krzyzewski at Duke. Those guys they quite literally build a real family, and that's how you should look at it. If you're looking at it to win games, I think that's a foolish thing to do, because at the end of the day, Zach, the high school state championship ring doesn't glitter as bright at age 43 as it did at 18.
I mean, it's a great memory, but like, I mean, again, too, it's the coaches, the parents, too. You're, I'm sorry, your kid's not going to make it. Like, I don't mean that negatively, but like, cool. What can they learn from this that's going to help their life in the future, so that they can maybe positively impact someone else's life, so that they can be you know, maybe their teammates in college are like, hey, that was the best teammate I ever had. He did X, Y, and Z, and that's the legacy. It's not about, look at me, I'm great at everything. It's about, hey, what did you do to help those people around you? How'd you help them feel part of something big? How'd you encourage the guy with maybe a less than skill set feel like he was part of the group and the team? I
They,
could talk about these things all day long, but like, look at it. Like, if you're thinking you're the next great thing, maybe you're thinking the wrong thing.
when you look at the athletes, we know a couple of athletes, Zach, that are now playing at the highest level, and we saw them in high school. And I remember the first time I saw some of these kids as freshmen or sophomores playing on the varsity. I was like, that guy's going on. You can just tell. You can tell. And if you see pictures of, for example, like Brett Favre in high school, he was a man among boys. And if you're going to go on to the highest level, it's pretty evident in the high school. I mean, we talked about Mark Burley earlier, right? But that's a pretty rare.
Baseball's a different thing.
Yeah. So the reason you should be doing it is for the fun. It's for the life lessons, and is to make sure that you
It
learn.
teaches you these things about what is my skill capable of, what can I take on,
Right.
and how can I use that in the next phase of my life.
Yeah, I hear you. It is a there's tremendous. There's such opportunity. We live in a world of such opportunity, but with that comes the risk that you may overthink these kinds of things, and you may don't let the good tear you down. All right, the
Don't
fact that
let
you can see
the
greatness.
fear of failure, the unknown of what it is, take on. You know what? Don't be afraid to suck at something. Like, take it on new, embrace the challenge. You've done challenges before. You've done things at high levels or whatever it may be. Understand that, like, you can't start at the same parallel high level of a new skill. You gotta start somewhere, and you gotta suck a little bit. But if you have fun with it, you enjoy it, it's gonna be worth
Yeah, so we encourage you to all go out there and suck at something.
it. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say suck at things, but enjoy, have fun, challenge yourselves in different ways and skill sets that you maybe don't appreciate in yourself as much as you really need to. But that's all I have to say. Again, I want to thank all of our listeners for listening. I want to go remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.